Welcome back, everyone. This is Amanda, Ridout health coach, and we are back with our favorite pharmacist, Ben Fuchs, also cosmetic chemist and nutritionist. And today we're going to be talking about cancer. And I think Ben has a really great message, and I can't wait to hear about it.
Hi, Amanda.
Hi, Ben. How are you doing?
Good to talk to you again. It's been a long time.
It has. We're back.
Okay, so we're going to talk cancer.
Yeah.
All right, so here's the deal with cancer. We have this mythology, this idea, these belief systems about cancer that lead people to believe that cancer is some kind of invasion that happens into the body, and you kill it, and you somehow extract it, or you radiate it. You fight it, basically. We fight cancer. We have a war on cancer. But ironically, or interestingly, our war on cancer started 30 years ago. We spent trillions of dollars on it. Now, I guess 40 years ago, over 40 years ago. It was in the early 1970s when President Nixon declared the so-called war on cancer. But cancer rates have not decreased. They've increased. We had about 1 million people diagnosed with cancer 40 years ago. Now we got 1.6 million people diagnosed with cancer. And that's despite trillions of dollars in fighting cancer. The problem is you can't fight cancer because cancer is a coping mechanism. Cancer is a way that cells cope with a stressed out environment, an environment that doesn't provide them with nutrition, that is toxic, especially in terms of sugar, and that is hypoxic, that doesn't contain an environment that doesn't contain enough oxygen for a cell to do its work. Yeah. These are ideas, by the way, that we've known about for a long time. So when you hear people say, we don't know what causes cancer, whoever says that doesn't really understand the basics of carcinogenesis, of the initiation of cancer. Cancer is not, when we talk about cancer, we talk about organs that are cancerous. We talk about lung cancer. We talk about ovarian cancer. And this is one of the reasons why we have this misunderstanding about cancer. Cancer is not an organ issue until way late in the process. It starts off as a cell issue. So we always talk about how the body's made up of cells and stuff, right? Raisins and bread. Cancer is a raisin issue. It's a cell issue. It's caused by a cell that is basically at its wit's end. It doesn't know what else to do. It has been starved, it has been toxic, and it has been suffering from a lack of oxygen for long enough that now it has switched into a secondary way of existing. A way of existing that allows it to work with the scant amount of nutrients that it has, a way of existing that allows it to work with the toxic environment that it's in, and a way of existing that allows it to work with a hypoxic or low oxygen environment. And this way of existing mandates that it divides very rapidly. Yep. When cancer cells divide very rapidly, following their lack of oxygen and their lack of nutrition and their toxicity, they don't, the internal structure of a cell doesn't develop appropriately. So a cell can't do its business. A lung cell can't act like a lung cell, a liver cell can't act like a liver cell, a pancreatic cell can't act like a pancreatic cell because it's dividing so rapidly. It doesn't have time to mature. In chemistry, we call that differentiation. It doesn't have time enough to differentiate, to develop all of its internal structures. So now you've got a cell that's dividing rapidly, and to make matters worse, it is not performing its duties. It's not maturing correctly. It doesn't have enough time to develop because it's dividing so rapidly. So the cause of cancer, the direct cause of cancer, is a lack of oxygen, a lack of nutrition, and a toxic environment that forces the cell to operate in what I call safe mode, where it can exist, but it can't do its business. Now, cancer doesn't kill anybody. What kills people is the fact that the cancer cells are not doing their business, but because they're dividing so rapidly, they're sucking up all the nutrition. So they're using all of the scant nutrients that are available, and on top of that, they're not doing their work. So when we die of cancer, what we really die of is a nutritional deficiency. Follow?
Wow.
It's not the cancer itself. Cancer itself is just cells growing out of control.
Right.
What's really causing the problem is that they're burning through nutrients as they're growing out of control, and the problem was started in the first place by a lack of nutrition. Follow what I'm saying? So
yep.
The problem with cancer, basically, to cut to the chase, is you've got a stressed out cell. The The cell then switches into a way of being that mandates its rapid division, and that's what we call cancer. Interestingly, this happens a lot in the body because there's always going to be stresses to cells. But cells have a self-destruct mechanism that will kick in, that's supposed to kick in when they're starved or when they're hypoxic or when they're toxic, so cancer doesn't occur. There are also enzymes and chemicals that are always scouting around looking for these deformed cells, and these enzymes can also kill the deformed cells. Even more interestingly, a normal cell inside of its jelly center, it's called a cytoplasm, its watery jelly center, has anti-cancer mechanisms. So that if you were to take the jelly substance from an inside of a cell and insert it into a cancer cell, that cancer cell would die. There are chemicals inside a normal cell that suppress tumors. So not only is cancer the manifestation of long-term burden on a cell, but it's also the manifestation of an overwhelm of the cancer suppression mechanisms.
Okay.
All of this is to say cancer shouldn't happen. It's an anomaly. And in fact, cancer prevalence, which is the amount of people, the number of people that have cancer at any given moment, is roughly around 4 to 5% of the population, which means 95% of people at any given time don't have cancer,
right,
which tells you that cancer is a weird thing. It's an anomaly. It shouldn't happen. All right?
Okay.
By the way, children who get cancer, 70% of childhood cancers resolve. So children have an ability to fight cancer, to destroy cancer. That's even more significant than adults. That's because kids' immune systems are really strong and powerful, and kids haven't had decades to muck up their system.
Right.
So all of this is to say that we have mechanisms for fighting cancer. Cancer is a rare occurrence. And if cancer does occur, it's occurring because something is missing or something is wrong.
Okay.
So what do you do? How do you address it?
Right.
This is all great theoretically, but you already have cancer. What do
Right.
you do? There's a couple strategies. If we know that cancer is initiated by a lack of nutrition, a lack of oxygen, and a toxic environment, and when I say toxic, I'm including sugar as a toxin, then right away you know that you have a strategy. Give the body nutrients, put oxygen into the system by making sure you're breathing correctly and moving your body around. You can also do things like hyperbaric oxygen chambers.
Yeah.
And then reduce the intake of toxins, and that includes sugar. Go on a low-sugar diet. Now, a second thing that can be done simultaneously with all of this is calming the body down. Remember, we have two nervous systems. We have the body has two ways of conducting its biochemical business, its neurological biochemical business. One is emergency mode, and the other is rest mode. We call them the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system is your healing nervous system. Your sympathetic nervous system is your emergency nervous system. If you want to access healing of anything, whether it's an autoimmune disease or whether it's something as simple as a cold or whether it's repairing from an accident, mechanical trauma, or whether it's fighting cancer, you have to learn to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. That means you have to calm the body down. This intuitively makes sense when you understand that cancer is a hyperdynamic state.
Yeah.
It's a lot of movement. It's a lot of activity. Cells are dividing really rapidly. Calming the body down is not only important for helping slow down carcinogenesis, slow down the movement or the activity of cancer cells, but it's also important for activating the healing system, activating the parasympathetic nervous system. So anything you could do to relax the body, even something as simple as taking naps and getting sleep. You know, we recover, our body heals when it's sleeping.
Right.
At night, when we're resting, we're secreting growth hormone, our body is fighting diseases. So sleeping, that alone can make a difference, making sure you're getting rest and making sure you're getting sleep. But also things like taking hot baths, massage, yoga, meditation, just mental and emotional relaxation strategies is another thing that you can do. Visualization techniques can help. Visualizing cancer being destroyed. You know, visualization sometimes gets marginalized by the mainstream medical model, but you know what? Athletes know that visualization can be a potent way to improve athletic performance. Right. And what is healing and what is even being alive if it's not a form of athletic performance? Mm-hmm. So things like visualization, visualizing the tumor getting smaller, visualizing that your body's healthy, that can be helpful. Then there's the digestive and the food strategies. Caloric restriction and fasting, something we talk about all the time for staying healthy, believe it or not, have wonderful anti-cancer benefits. Recently, it's been discovered that fasting can actually help chemotherapy work better. So not only is fasting anti-cancer, but if you decide to go to the chemotherapeutic route, which I'll talk about here in a second, fasting can help your chemotherapy work significantly better so that you don't need to have as intense a chemotherapeutic protocol. Now, while we're on the subject of chemotherapy, I should tell you, we have this mythology, more mythology, in the world of cancer, that chemotherapy kills cancer, that somehow you take your chemotherapy and your cancer's done. That's not true. There are a few cancers that can be helped by chemotherapy, that can be so-called cured by chemotherapy, mostly lymphomas and leukemias, testicular cancer as well. But for most people, the vast majority of cancers are not going to be cured by chemotherapy. In fact, there are studies that show that chemotherapy contributes something like 2% to help to healing cancer or reducing cancer. I read one study just last night that talked about chemotherapy contributing about 2% benefits to eliminating cancer. And that's on top of all the toxicity that you get with the chemotherapy.
It wipes out everything.
Well, yeah, because what does chemotherapy do? It kills things. It kills cells. The logic is, well, cancer cells are growing so fast that the chemotherapy will affect the cancer cells more than it will affect the other cells. The cancer cells are sucking up nutrients and drugs much faster than normal cells. So the thinking is the chemotherapy is something like a silver bullet that will target specifically the fast-dividing cancer cells. Unfortunately, skin cells are also fast-dividing. The cells that make up the glands of the body are fast-dividing. The cells that line up the digestive tract, are also fast-dividing. So we know that you have all of these cells are affected by chemotherapy too, and we call those side effects. Right. Skin effects and digestive problems and problems with the immune system. Immune cells are also dividing very rapidly. So you have to deal with all of the toxicity of chemotherapy, and you don't even get much benefit for it. And this is why many oncologists will refuse chemotherapy for themselves. So as far as chemotherapy goes, if you're going to do chemotherapy, recognize that all of these other strategies, including fasting and including caloric restricting your calories, can make your chemotherapy work better.
Right.
Then there is the flat-out nutritional strategies, and there's some great ones. You hear a lot of controversy about vitamin C. Well, in my opinion, vitamin C is one of the most important anti-cancer nutritional strategies you could ever use. Doctors will tell you not to take vitamin C with your chemotherapy because they're afraid it will counteract your chemotherapy. The way I look at it is will make your chemotherapy work better. Yeah. Vitamin C actually will mitigate some of the toxicity, some of the side effects associated with chemotherapy. Other nutrients that could be helpful for helping the body fight cancer. It's not the nutrients that are doing the work. The nutrients are helping the body do the work. Right. Selenium, sulfur. The body's major cancer fighter is something called glutathione. Glutathione is a protein substance that's made up of 3 amino acids. It fights aging, it fights diseases, it fights bacteria, and it's an anti-cancer substance. As we get older, we don't make as much glutathione. As our body is stressed, we don't have as much glutathione. You could help your body produce glutathione by using things like selenium, whey protein, the amino acid glutamine, the amino acid cysteine in the form of NAC or N-acetylcysteine, the amino acid glycine, which is found in cartilage and bone soup. And by the way, cartilage and bone soup are another wonderful strategy for building the immune system, all cartilage products. Right. In any case, cartilage is a tried or true remedy for helping with a lot of health challenges. And one of the things cartilage contains in it is a substance called glycine, Glycine. And glycine is a component of the glutathione molecule, so it can help you build glutathione. Okay. You can actually get glutathione injections as well. That's another thing that they can do, intravenous glutathione. Other things that you might want to consider doing is hyperbaric oxygen. That's where you drive oxygen high pressure. Many hospitals have hyperbaric oxygen chambers. These are all strategies that don't necessarily kill the cancer, but they help the body fight the cancer. See, that's the way you want to look at taking care of disease, whether it's cancer or any disease. You don't want to so much focus on the disease. That's the way the medical model does it. They focus on the disease. What we want to focus on is focusing on the strength of the body. We want to pay attention to the strength of the body. We want to make the body stronger. And ironically, chemotherapy, radiation, surgery, what do? They don't make
weaken your body.
They weaken the body. So to the point where we don't know if somebody's on chemotherapy and they die of cancer, we don't know whether it was the chemotherapy that killed them or that it was the cancer, or it was the side effects of the cancer. So there's a lot of mythology around cancer. It's not that things cause cancer as much as they cause a cell to be stressed, and then the cell switches over into carcinogenesis. Also, while we're on the subject of mythology, people have this idea that they have a gene for cancer. You heard this?
Yes.
Oh, I got the gene for cancer. Any geneticist worth his salt cringes when somebody says, I have the gene for something, because that's not how genetics work.
No.
There's no gene that matches up with a symptom.
Right.
Genes are complex networks, so that genes interact with each other. They're responsive to the environment. They turn on and off depending on nutritional status. They turn on and off depending on toxicity. They turn on and off depending on stress and burden.
Yeah.
So nobody necessarily has the gene for cancer, even though obviously it's the genetics that are involved, but it's the genetics that are involved secondary to some kind of stress or some kind of burden on the cell.
Right.
So you got a mythology about things causing cancer. We got a mythology that says we can use chemotherapy and kill cancer. We've got the mythology that says there's a gene for cancer and we're condemned. There are people that actually will have organs removed out of their body preemptively.
I know.
Right? Because they've been told they have a gene for cancer.
Yeah.
Completely misunderstanding how genetics work. So the best way to take care of cancer is to prevent it.
Right.
Is to not get it in the first place. But if you're dealing with cancer and it's in the early stages, stage 1 or stage 2, your job is to strengthen your body using all of the techniques we talk about. You and I have talked about on YouTube, things we talk about on my radio program, The Bright Side, things Dr. Wallach talks about. This is general bodybuilding strategies. Good nutrition, making sure you're oxygenating, making sure you're avoiding toxicity, particularly the toxicity that's associated with sugar. Your main strategy is going to be to catch it early enough to prevent it from occurring. If you're further on the process, if you're at stage 3 or you're at stage 4, then you may need to kill things. Stage 4 in particular, that's where the cancer has spread throughout the body. Then you may need to go into the killing strategy. But the object is not to let the cancer get to stage 3 or stage 4, but to catch it early enough at stage 1 and stage 2. And then at that point, you can strengthen the body, make the body stronger, and always know, if you, God forbid, are diagnosed with cancer, that cancers remit spontaneously. This is something we've known about for millennia, for hundreds of years. They've observed, medical professionals have observed spontaneous remissions from cancer. I don't like the term spontaneous remission because it sounds like it was magical.
Right.
The idea is that cancers remit. If they can remit for one person, they can remit for any person.
Right.
If the human body is capable of addressing cancer to the point where it can disappear for one person, it can disappear for anybody. The human body is capable of remitting cancer. Chemotherapy can't do it.
Right.
Doctors will never tell you you're cured of cancer. In fact, they measure cancer cure rates by survival. They call it 5-year survival. Have you heard of this?
Yes, I have.
They say that you're cured if you have a 5-year survival, right? But 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, you can still get the cancer coming back. Right. And the reason is because usually with chemotherapy and radiation and the standard medical strategies, we don't address the cause of the cancer, which is the lack of nutrition, the toxic burden, and the lack of oxygen. This is the big 3. This is the only reason cells get sick. All disease is cell disease, and all cell disease is starvation, lack of the mighty 90 essential nutrients, toxification, accumulation of poisons and waste, including sugar, and suffocation, a lack of oxygen. So basically the same strategies that are in play, whether you're dealing with acne or atherosclerosis or autoimmune diseases, are in play when you want to address cancer. Ideally, you want to prevent it, and again, using these same strategies, but once it happens, you want to catch it as early as you can and use all the strategies we talked about.
We do talk about that. There's several other videos. We had one where you did the all diseases, cell disease. We talk about fucoidan in another video.
Fucoidan is another one. I forgot to mention that. Fucoidan and algae and polysaccharides, complex sugars, also have anti-cancer properties, and this is one of the reasons why bone soup can be so helpful.
Right.
In addition to glycine, it contains these kind of long-chain sugars and sugar protein molecules called proteoglycans, but algae, brown algae, fucoidan, if you Google fucoidan or do a PubMed search on fucoidan and cancer, you get dozens, maybe even hundreds of hits on it, and it's these sugars, the polysaccharides and the fucoidan, that have such a wonderful anti-cancer effect, wonderful blood thinning effect, wonderful healing effect. They're great for your skin. They're great for your joints.
Anti-aging.
Fucoidan is just wonderful. C vegetation in general is also great for great for the immune system and for fighting cancer in general, anti-aging.
I really think this information is going to help a lot of people. There's a lot of confusion and there's a lot of fear out there of, I can't take nutrition or I can't supplement with, whole food nutrition because it's going to hurt me. When the answer is you were missing that in the beginning,
In the
and
first
that's
place.
and that is why you're where you're at.
Right, and this is why it's important to recognize that chemotherapy is not an effect for most cancers.
Right.
Is not an effective remedy. You may reduce the tumor size, but that doesn't mean you're going to live a longer life.
Right.
As long as the situation or the environment that the cell is living in is set up for cancer, cancer is more than likely going to come back. And on top of the fact that you have to deal with all of the toxicity that's associated
Right.
with the cancer.
Right. Wow. Thank you once again. I love this topic. I love this topic. I wish that everybody on the planet could hear this message, and hopefully
Right.
they will.
And if you got, like I say, God forbid you've been diagnosed with cancer, it doesn't have to be a death sentence. Even the most deadly of cancers, say pancreatic cancer, which has a 5-year survival rate of like 3% or 2%, something really small. Most people will die of pancreatic cancer within 5 years. That still means 2%, 2 out of 100, 1%, 1 out of 100 are going to make it. And there's no reason why, if you've been diagnosed that way, that one person can't be you, or those two people, you can't be one of those two people, one of that 2%.
Absolutely. Well, underneath this video, there'll be links and more information on where people can listen to more of your program, where they can find more help. And so, again, I say thank you, and we'll be back soon with more topics.
Thank you, Amanda.